I'm just going to bring up our last speaker here tonight before we go into a discussion with the audience here. And this is Ben Parfitt from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. And I think the best way to describe Ben is he's really one of the leading, if not the leading, independent water and energy policy researcher and expert in this province. And he's done some phenomenal work really studying what's going on and bringing that to the public. He's done through a study that he did with the Monk School, and recently his comprehensive report was at fracking up the climate. Ben, do I have that correct?
Yeah.
Fracking up our water, fracking up our climate, and I think that pretty much sums it up. So I'd like to welcome Ben Parfitt. Are you not going to do PowerPoint, or do
No. Well, I am truly honored to be here tonight and to have this opportunity. I did have a PowerPoint I was going to show, but I decided I'm going to chuck it in favor of just talking a little bit and responding to some of the incredible things that have been said and shared with us tonight. But I guess I wanted to start off by saying I've been on a real journey of discovery personally for the last 3 years working on this issue, and it does my heart, my soul, so much good to see the power here at the front of this room, the united stance that is being taken by these people and the many supporters that they have in this room here, all the families that have come down to support the leadership in this call. It's just an amazing thing to see, and I've just seen the strength growing in this community over the last 2 years in amazing ways, and I'm personally privileged to have had the opportunity to spend some time in Fort Nelson and in other parts of the wider Treaty 8 territory over the last few years, and it really does help to actually get out on the ground and see things and get an understanding about what people are up against in this part of the world, which all of us in this room derive benefit from every single day that we wake up. So the power that's coming out of our lights wouldn't be coming out of those lights if it weren't for those massive dams up in the Peace River country. The gas in any of the homes that are heated by gas here is coming from somewhere, and it's coming from up in Fort Nelson First Nation territory or in the territories of First Nations further to the south in northeast British Columbia. So what I wanted to do just quickly is just to reflect on a few of the things and maybe amplify on a few of the things that you've heard tonight to give you a little bit of context. So Harjap started off tonight by talking about British Columbia's shale gas resources essentially being the equivalent of Alberta's tar sands. I just want to emphasize the importance of that remark. Our Premier, a month and a half ago, in a speech before the University of Calgary, said that her goal for this province was to see 4 trillion cubic feet of gas per year exported from British Columbia. That's her vision for our energy future. And what you need to get your minds wrapped around when she talks about that kind of vision is that when you think about those slides that Caleb was showing, you have to imagine those dots quintupling. Every year from here on in. Because we're not just going to export 4 trillion cubic feet of gas to China, Japan, and other Asian countries. We have to remember we're already producing 1.2 trillion cubic feet. Most of that's going to Alberta. A good chunk of it is going to the United States, and the rest of it is being used by you and I. So we're already using 1.2 trillion cubic feet. Our Premier wants to export 4 trillion cubic feet. And we don't have enough hydroelectric power in this province to power even 1 massive liquefied natural gas plant without building another big dam. So all of the power that's going to be used for these liquefied natural gas terminals, if they get built, the likely power source is going to be natural gas. So maybe it's going to be a 6-fold increase in gas production to realize that vision. And the question before us is, what is the impact going to be on our shared water resources, right? That's, to me, is the big issue, and that is what Chief Wildeman and former Chief Dickey before her and Lana and Caleb are struggling to get their minds wrapped around every single day. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that Chief Wildeman laid out basically 5 conditions that need to be met so that we can start to have a dialogue. And I just want to amplify very briefly on those 5 conditions. So she said before water licenses are issued, full baseline studies need to be done. Well, those studies haven't been done. We need, at a minimum, 5 years worth of data on water flows in individual streams and rivers before we start to approve companies having guaranteed rights of access to those water resources for 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. We need that baseline study to be done before these fundamental decisions are made. I grew up writing in this province, writing about the forest industry, and I used to think back in the 1980s that the likes of McMillan Bloedel were amongst the most powerful industries that I had ever encountered in my life. They are little children playing in a sandbox, and they're getting sand kicked in their faces every day by this industry. This industry has billions of dollars at its disposal, and at a very minimum, they know where they're going to go. They have a very clear idea where they want to go. They know the water they're going to need. They know how many gas wells they're going to have to put in. They know how many pipelines they're going to have to build. They know how much forest they're going to have to clear. They know how many roads they're going to have to build. So to show people respect that are due respect, they should say, this is what we intend to do over the next 5 years. This is what we intend to do over the next 10 years. Let's have a conversation about where we're going. At least then we can have an informed discussion. Right now, it literally is a death by 1,000 cuts. Companies apply for permits that are granted overnight by the Oil and Gas Commission with no previous consultation with the nations that are being affected. And that's simply unacceptable. The third thing that Chief Wildeman talked about was that we need a mutually agreed to cumulative effects process so that we can begin to wrap our minds around what we're talking about here. To give people an idea about how much water we're talking about being used in one multi-well fracking operation today, the way I kind of get my mind wrapped around it is every week or so I go for a run around Elk and Beaver Lakes in the city of Victoria. It's a 10-mile or a 10-kilometer chip trail run. And every time I do that run, I think to myself, every drop of water in these 2 lakes would be gone in one multi-well frac operation. That's how much water we're talking about going to produce gas at a 12-well pad today in Fort Nelson First Nation territory. So we need to know what the cumulative effects of all of this are going to be so that we have rational development happening, not just development wherever companies want that development to take place. The other thing we heard tonight is that culturally significant lands need to be set aside and ruled off limits to development. And lastly, where development does occur, the people that do the monitoring and enforcement work on the public's behalf need to be truly independent. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Oil and Gas Commission, the dedicated regulator for the oil and gas industry in this province, the commission that gives the companies permission to drill where they do, to also be the environmental watchdog. That power should rest with somebody else. Thirdly, in responding to what former Chief Dickey had to say, she talked about the fact that they use natural gas to heat some of their homes. We desperately need in this province, I think, to be paying more attention to our relationships one to the other. We are deriving huge benefits from the resources that are being drained out of this region of the province, and we owe it to the people that live there to respect their wishes and to stand with them in telling our provincial government and our leaders that development must happen with certain safeguards being in place, and anything less is really an abrogation of our responsibilities to our fellow citizens. Caleb, I think, gave a very brilliant indication of what lies before the Fort Nelson First Nation in terms of these cumulative impacts. We really need to get our minds wrapped around the pace of what is happening and to understand that at present, the Fort Nelson First Nation and many nations in the Northeast are simply overwhelmed with applications and have very, very little ability right now under the current rules to shape their destinies. So we really need to find a way to get proper planning processes in place that respect that there are limits to what we can take from the earth. And I think lastly, I wanted to say that Laurel's presentation, I think, really says it all. I mean, we all know in our hearts that we rely on water. We need it to live our lives. We draw great benefit from it. We draw pleasure from it. It's where much of us get our spiritual sustenance from. We all share in that. We all have our special places. And I can tell you from my travels in this part of the world over the last couple of years that if we don't get our minds wrapped around helping the people and communities up there quickly, that a lot of water resources are going to be damaged beyond repair. So I think it's really incumbent that we start to work together on these issues. And I just want to end by saying that I'm just so excited by the energy that I've seen at the table here, the growing awareness in the community that things need to change. And I want to thank the organizers for putting this on, and a special thanks to Damien, who I think might be a future political leader as well. So thank you very much.